Welcome to the Firebelly Social Show. We're focused on talking to food and beverage brands that are on a mission to make the world better.
Hey, everyone. It's Duncan here with another episode of the Firebelly Social Show, where we chat with founders and leaders of mission-driven food and beverage brands. So if you know the space, maybe you're a founder, maybe you are around founders, it's a very special group of passionate, driven, intense people, and we love featuring them. So thank you for tuning in to this latest episode. We have a great show lined up for you with Ted Dumbauld, founder and co-CEO of SoNo 1420. The episode is brought to you by Firebelly Marketing. At Firebelly, we help mission-based food and beverage brands bring people closer through social media marketing. You know, social media is important, so if you're ready to use social media to create more community, excitement for your brand, Firebelly is your people. Go to firebellymarketing.com to learn more. And I'm so excited to welcome Ted to the show today. As a serial entrepreneur, he's a founder and co-CEO of SoNo 1420, which is America's maritime distillery. We're going to get more into that. And he's steering this ship of innovation in the spirits world under his leadership. The company has snagged double gold medals at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition 2 years running. The 1 year alone would be amazing, but 2 years for their foolproof bourbon and blaze whiskey, crowned as America's best cinnamon bourbon. And that's not all. He's also the mastermind behind Threesome Cocktails, great name, ready to mix, a game-changing line that's redefining the cocktail experience. Ted, my man, welcome to the show.
Duncan, thank you, sir. That's a great introduction, and I'm happy to be here today with you.
Let's talk about our producers have helped put some little cool phrases in here. So, my first question for you is about charting a course for innovation. And, you guys have been making waves in the spirits world. What made you, or what got you inspired, to start this all and get going on the spirits journey?
Sure. So to answer that question, I'll give you a quick background from how I got from there to here, because I don't have a traditional beverage alcohol background or consumer products background. In fact, very early in my career, I was a nuclear submarine officer. I got my MBA and I spent 20 years on MIT working for some large investment banks like Bear Stearns and Deutsche Bank. And then I leveraged those experiences into setting up my own hedge fund. And so for 20, almost 30 years, I was a portfolio manager and trader sitting behind a desk and monitoring screens all day. So after 30 years of that, I figured I'd had enough. And some of my hedge fund activities was involved in taking investments in private companies and not just publicly traded companies. And that evolved into taking some board seats and then taking some control positions. So it became more of an operator, less of just a portfolio manager. And fast forward till about 10 years ago, one of the opportunities that I was introduced to was a failing medical cannabis company located here in Connecticut. This 10 years ago, in the cannabis industry, it seems like eons ago, because the world has evolved. But back then, I think there might have only been 10 or 12 states that had cannabis legalized, where now I think we're closer to 40. And so it was kind of a wild, wild west. And a lot of people, given my background, looked at me with crazy eyes, saying, why would you, you were a Naval Academy grad and an MIT MBA, why would you risk your career by going into the cannabis game? Nonetheless, I jumped in with both feet, became the CEO of a company here in Connecticut that needed to be turned around. And so we ended up doing that, and it took about 18 months or so, but it turned out to be a very good investment and a very good opportunity. But as I joined that company, I had no background whatsoever in cannabis. And so I started going to a bunch of conferences and doing other things to educate myself on the industry. And a few things I noticed at these conferences, I went to a lot of conferences, and some of them were smaller, 200 or 300 people. The last one I went to was about 40,000 people. But what I observed, even though these were cannabis-centric conferences, there was still a lot of alcohol being consumed. It's very difficult and based on the laws of the different states to do much socializing. There aren't that many smoking lounges, and not everybody wants to sit around and smoke joints together. So there still had lots of cocktail receptions and booze cruises and things like that. So and another observation was that anytime you get more than a few hundred people together, these large alcohol brands, whether it's, a Budweiser or Jack Daniels, will have a presence there, marketing their products to those consumers. And there was absolutely none of that because cannabis is still federally illegal. And so the big brands can't afford to get too close to the plant without potentially jeopardizing their multi-billion-dollar franchises. And then another observation was that in those states that had legalized cannabis, there was anywhere between a 5 to 10% or more decline in alcoholic beverage sales. And that's only been accelerating over the last few years in particular. So I said, hey, there's probably an opportunity for a young startup company that could push the envelope at this intersection between cannabis and alcohol and build a brand that appeals to those people that have incorporated cannabis into their lifestyle, but still go out and enjoy a cocktail, because it's much easier to go to a bar and have a cocktail than go to a bar and have a joint. And so that's the idea behind this. And so that was how we came up with the idea. So then just by the definition of creating maybe not a new category, but a series of products that were at that intersection of cannabis and alcohol led to the innovation that we were required to use in order to build this brand. So I don't know if that gives you a too long of an answer, but that's how we got from there to here.
That's a great answer. And, I was going to ask about the nuclear submarine experience and what that was like, but thank you for bringing it up. I mean, I know that you're used to working in tight spaces and you have to do a lot with a very little in submarines. And so I'm sure that was a valuable experience. So let's talk about the double gold medals 2 years in a row. What do you first of all, what do you think about it? And, maybe a little insight into how y'all did it.
Right. So the first innovation we did, and anytime you start a new product, whether it's, in technology or in spirits, you have to have some differentiating feature that you can talk to the consumers about. And so again, going back to this, the branding, the first thing that we did was your standard whiskey is made with a combination of 4 grains, which are corn, rye, wheat, and barley. So another of my learnings in the cannabis industry was that the hemp plant, which is the same cannabis sativa plant as marijuana, but the legal definition is that if the mature female flower has less than 0.3% THC in it, it was, as a function of the 2018 Farm Bill, was completely descheduled. So the hemp plant is now 100% legal to either grow or possess or whatever. And one of the major products coming off of the hemp plant is hemp seed. And hemp seed is an oil seed. You go to most, Whole Foods or any store now, you can get hemp seed oil, or you can buy hemp seeds themselves. They're in granola and whatever. And so I said, and if you take a look at what a hemp seed looks like, it kind of looks like almost a grain of rye. So at one of the conferences at the University of Kentucky, which was a hemp-centric conference, I said, hey, what happens if you take this previously unavailable seed and use that in a recipe of whiskey to make something completely unique and different and give us something to talk about. So that was the original innovation. So making whiskey takes a long time. It to create a batch of the liquid's not that long, but then you have to put it in a barrel and wait anywhere 2 to 4 years or whatever. So I laid down some whiskey before we opened our doors, which we opened about 5 years ago. So when we opened our doors, we had some whiskey that was 3 years old, and so it was pretty decent whiskey. And we started marketing it using the differentiating feature that, hey, it's not a normal mash bill. It's got corn, rye, and hemp seed, and hemp seed gives it a different flavor profile, gives you a fuller mouthfeel and that kind of thing. So we were able to, get some traction in the market with that differentiating feature. And then in 2022, my first barrel was almost of the whiskey I laid down was almost 4 years old, and I cracked it open and took a sample, and I said, "Wow, this is spectacular whiskey." And normally, and without getting into too much of the details of the whiskey manufacturing process, but you fill the barrel at a higher proof, and our standard barrel fill proof is 125 proof, which is 62.5% alcohol, which is a pretty stout drink. Then before you release it and bottle it, you tend to downproof it. And by definition, bourbon has to be downproof to no less than 80 proof or 40% alcohol. So you can go anywhere between 80. So, but most of the popular brands are right around 90 proof or whatever. So I sampled this whiskey at barrel proof, which at the time was 126, because it evolved. The whiskey evolves when it's in the barrel. And then I downproofed it to 90 and said, it was just too spectacular at that high proof. So we entered it into the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. And without getting too much detail, that competition is the longest running competition here in the States, the most prestigious of the competitions. There's a bunch of them now throughout the country and the world. But if you win a gold medal or double gold medal from San Francisco, it kind of puts you on the map, because unlike some of these other competitions, you can kind of buy your way onto the podium by buying advertising or whatever. In this case, it's well known that you can't buy yourself onto the podium. So we thought we had some really good whiskey and entered into the competition. And sure enough, surprise, surprise, we got a double gold medal. So we said, wow, not only do we have a unique marketing message, but now we're able to make some really, really great spirits. So we were able to evolve our marketing message to, it's not just, we have a different mash bill, but we also have a different mash bill that makes really, really great whiskey. So that kind of set us on this new trajectory of focusing not just on our unique differences, but also on the quality of our products. And then the following year, that was during COVID, we did some more innovation, and Jack Fire was in short supply. So we said, okay, if we make a bourbon using real cinnamon and real bourbon, unlike the Jack Fires or the Fireballs of the world, then we might have a pretty good chance to take some market share. And so we entered that into the competition. And not only did it also win a double gold medal, but it was deemed a best in class a cinnamon whiskey. So that's when we were able to say, okay, this is the best cinnamon whiskey in the country. So it's been a fun ride.
I mean, I just want to say, that as a leader, you have to make and be a visionary. You've got to see these things. You've got to trust your instincts. So when you're making the world a better place, I always like to say that too. We don't have anyone on here that we don't admire. So I just wanted to say that. Thanks for making the world a better place. But what about the name, Ted? Tell us about the name. It's a unique name, and I know there's a story behind the name.
Sure. So SoNo, we're located in South Norwalk, Connecticut. So SoNo is where that comes from. We're in a unique environment here. We're located right next to the Norwalk Harbor, which is a 5-minute ride out into the Long Island Sound. And so the terroir, if you will, of where we age our whiskey has a big influence on the flavor of the whiskey. A lot of people early on would say, hey, you're in Connecticut, how can, all the good whiskey bourbons made in Kentucky, how can you make really great whiskey in Connecticut? And we said, well, in addition to our great mash bill, we've got a much different environment. We're located next to the sea. The briny sea air has a huge influence on how our whiskey is aged through the years. And in fact, we have a partnership with a local shellfish operation, and we put barrels of our whiskey on their oyster boats. And so that gives us a whole different flavor profile. So we wanted to really, focus in, lean into our local roots here in South Norwalk. And so that's why that was part of the name. And then the 1420 comes, it's a bit of a double entendre. Our whole branding image is that, we're rebels. We're doing, on the cutting edge of, cannabis and alcohol. And Connecticut, if you look back to the days of pre-prohibition, Connecticut was highly anti-prohibition. And by the time, and so in 1919, Connecticut came up on the Connecticut state legislature to vote on the 18th Amendment, which of course was prohibition. And by the time Connecticut got around to it, enough of the states that had already ratified the amendment that it didn't matter what Connecticut did. But the proponents for prohibition wanted to get a unanimous consent amongst all, at the time, 48 states. So there was a big push to have Connecticut as one of the last states to vote to ratify the amendment. But Connecticut had no interest in that. The history of the immigrants in Connecticut that worked in a lot of the factories up in Bridgeport and Hartford or whatever, they had incorporated alcohol, beer into their lifestyles, and they were living in some pretty squalid conditions in these factories. And so the last thing they wanted to do was to give up their alcohol. So when it came time to vote at the state Senate level, there were a total of 34 state senators, and 14 of them voted for the amendment and 20 voted against, and therefore did not pass. And Connecticut became just the first of two states that failed to ratify prohibition. And so Connecticut, throughout prohibition, was known as, quote, the wettest state in the nation back in the day. The wets were pro-alcohol, the dries were anti-alcohol. So for the most part, for whatever the 22 years of prohibition, there was absolutely no enforcement or very little enforcement of prohibition. There's a lot of drinking going on. Think about Great Gatsby and all that era. There was in Westport, Connecticut, and on Belle Island right here, there was just infamous number of parties. F. Scott Fitzgerald and other folks like that were here partying and drinking out in the open with no consequence. So that's embodied in our brand. But then there's the little last little twist to that is, of course, if you take out the 1 from the 1420, you're left with 420, which most people know that has the connotation of the marijuana culture. So that's what we tried to do. Everything we tried to do here is designed to be fun and a little thought provoking. We thought our name did the same thing in that vein.
And definitely layered, very layered. I love it. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Threesome Cocktails. How did you get going on that, and tell us more about it in general?
Yeah, so one of the features of our products throughout our portfolio of SKUs is that we try to differentiate ourselves by the quality of the product. And by that, in addition to having a great whiskey that's aged here by the seashore, but unlike most of the major national brands that use natural flavors, we actually are using real juices and like real coffee, coffee flavor. And so one innovation that I came up with was that your standard ready to drink cocktail comes, they say, in a 355 ml 12 ounce can. And if it's an espresso martini, it's going to have some vodka in there. It's going to have some espresso, and it's going to have a coffee liqueur. But it comes prepackaged in that can. The can, sits in a warehouse before it gets shipped to the store. And then by the time the consumer opens it, it's several weeks old. And just from a chemistry perspective, when you mix these ingredients together, they combine chemically and don't give you nearly the freshness that if you went to your local bar and your bartender mixed up a espresso martini with fresh espresso and vodka and a coffee liqueur and shook it up and put it in front of you. So we said, hey, what happens if we keep those three ingredients, in this case for the espresso martini, separate right until you're ready to consume it? And plus, alcohol consumption is an experience. And so, a lot of people want to be bartenders, but they don't have the skill sets or don't necessarily have all the ingredients. So our solution was to package together in a single shrink wrap package 3 individual bottles. And in the case of our espresso martini, 1 bottle is vodka, 1 bottle is the fresh espresso that we make, and another one is our coffee liqueur that we also make in-house. And then, so they sit on the shelf or you buy it and you take it home, and then you're ready to have your espresso martini. You take the top off of each of the little bottles, and they're 50 ml bottles, kind of like your airline nip type bottles. Take the 3 tops off. You can pour it directly into a glass with ice, or you can pour it into a shaker. You can shake it up, strain it, and put it into your coupe glass. And now you've got a freshly poured, very simple, perfect every time espresso martini that you can't get anywhere else.
I mean, I think it's I love how you said in Wine Enthusiast that the concept is nearly 100% foolproof, and most people figure it out after watching someone else pour or mix a drink. I love that the way that you express that, and I think that what are you seeing happening in the space?
It's one of the fastest growing categories in the beverage alcohol space. And so again, trying to differentiate ourselves rather than just being another White Claw or High Noon. Here we have a much fresher experience, plus the experience of being able to open the individual bottles and put it in the shaker and have a really great experience and a great flavor profile. So in addition to the espresso martini version, we have a margarita version, which is, of course, tequila, lemon and lime juice, and triple sec. And then we also have a cosmopolitan, which is another favorite. It's got the vodka, it's got triple sec, and it's got cranberry juice in it. So there's lots of variety in the products that we make and have available for our consumers.
So let me ask you this: what do you have coming up, in the near future that you're excited about, or just anything that's on your mind in general?
Sure. Yeah, we're very, very, very excited about the next product that we're going to be launching here in the very near future. And again, without getting into too much detail, the 2018 Farm Bill, as I mentioned before, descheduled the hemp plant. And hemp is, again, defined as cannabis sativa with less than 0.3% THC. So when it was descheduled, it means that not only is the hemp plant itself not a Schedule I drug, but any of the extracts or components that come from that plant are not a Schedule I drug. So it's a bit of a loophole that Congress is looking at to close, but so far they have not. And that means that even though hemp has 0.3% THC in it, if you have enough hemp and you extract that THC, then it's a perfectly legal compound, even though it's the exact same compound that you get in marijuana. But because it's extracted from a non-Schedule I drug, it itself, by definition, is not a Schedule I drug. So there's been a few competitors that have brought out ready-to-drink cocktails that have been infused with THC that's been extracted from the hemp plant. And certain states have taken a look at this and said, wait a second, this is, we don't like this, or the licensed marijuana companies have big lobbies and they're trying to protect their franchises. So out of the 50 states, I think 5 of them have passed laws that prohibit the sale in those states of ready-to-drink beverages that have, rather than alcohol in it, has THC. And under federal regs, you cannot put THC and alcohol in the same container, just because even if it's a hemp-derived THC, my regulator on the alcohol side has to approve every formula, and they would just never approve a formula with THC in it. So we're talking about non-alcoholic beverages. And then Connecticut just passed a law that not only approved or allowed the sale of THC-infused beverages, but also put in place a set of rules and regulations that if you follow, you can very easily enter into that market here in Connecticut. And given my background in the cannabis space, and it's not that easy to put a molecule or a milligram of THC into a beverage, because THC in its purest form is a very viscous, non-water soluble compound. So you can't just extract THC and dump it in a glass of lemonade and stir it up and expect to get a homogeneous solution. So there's some technical steps you have to go through to homogenize and particleize the THC so that it becomes water soluble, doesn't come out of solution when you put it in your cocktail. And so we are just waiting for the last set of licensing approvals from the state that will then allow us to start selling these non-alc THC, hemp-derived THC cocktails. And because of the regs here in Connecticut, liquor stores are permitted. They're the only stores that are permitted to sell these beverages. So you can't go to a 7-Eleven or a bar or restaurant. But in order for a liquor store to be able to sell these products, they have to apply for a license from the state. And that information is publicly available. And since we already have a great network of retailers here in the state of Connecticut, the list, there's 241 liquor stores that have this license to sell THC beverages, and we already have relationships with over 140 of them. And so in our initial conversations with those liquor stores, they're all very interested because they know we've got great quality products. There aren't that many other products out there available because Connecticut's in their regs, they limit the amount of THC in a given container to just 3 milligrams per 12-ounce serving. So there are some other brands out there that have 20 milligrams or 10 milligrams. So they can't be sold in the state. So, compared to the alcohol world where you've got, hundreds of ready-to-drink cocktails or hundreds of vodkas and whiskeys, there's a much smaller segment of competitors. So once we get this product in the market, we think we can get a really big part of the market share and get another step of acceleration and growth in our business.
That's phenomenal. I mean, the thinking that you guys do is just so inspiring. You every detail is carefully thought through. Let me ask you this, Ted. Who are some of your heroes?
Oh gosh, the first person that pops to mind comes from. So I mentioned before, I went to the Annapolis, the Naval Academy, and when I was there, the superintendent, who is the senior military officer, was a man by the name of Vice Admiral William P. Lawrence. And he was in the running for being one of the original astronauts, the Mercury 7 astronauts, but at the last minute, he was diagnosed with a heart murmur, so he wasn't eligible for that. But he went on to a really great aviation career, and at one point, he held the world record for flying an airplane the fastest in the world. He was a pilot during Vietnam, and he was shot down, and he spent 7 years of his life living in the Hanoi Hilton as one of the senior officers there. And the fact that he was able to get through that experience and came back and had a wonderful life. And he was one of my mentors when I was at the Naval Academy, and one of the reasons that I was able to get the education that I did. So one of the most, a true American hero, and just really an inspiring, human being. So he's one guy that, had a big impact and influence on my life. And then, I have a few other people that, might sound trite, but, Steve Jobs and his approach to business has always been somebody that I've studied and I haven't always followed his philosophy. And when I find myself trying to do too many things and having a singular focus like he expounded, I find I get myself into trouble. And so let's say, let's tell me that those are two names.
Yeah, that's super cool. Let me ask you this question. As you go about your life, when you see someone, that inspires you in your daily life, what is that person? What kind of person is that? What does a successful life look like to you?
Yeah. So, most people, when you would say the word success, oh, that person's successful, they mean money, right? Oh yeah, he's been successful. He's a billionaire, got $100 million or whatever. So, very early in my career when I was in Wall Street, I kind of bought into that definition of success. But as I've gotten older and I realized that money's not everything, to me, success is being happy, right? And it's really difficult to find happiness because there's so many outside influences, and people tend to compare themselves to other people, and so I was 10 years ago got involved in the yoga world and meditation. And so I was able to become a trained yoga instructor and went on several silent meditation retreats to kind of, become more centered and, living in this, fast-paced Wall Street world where everybody's trying to make more money than the next person. That helped me become a little more grounded and hopefully brought some more peace and tranquility to the crazy world that I found myself in.
It's fascinating answer. I love the answer. I was listening to Edward Norton a few days ago Ed Norton talked to Tim Ferriss. And the comment he made was he looks for people that have multiple pursuits and are leading interesting lives, and have found joy. And you don't hear that often enough, right? The value of joy. I mean, I know it's an elusive state of mind or being, but I love the emphasis that he placed on that kind of multifaceted approach. What do? You must have a great relationship with your co-founder. What's that like having? Usually, they say the joke is if you send project managers out in a boat for a couple of days, they'll come back with schedules and plans. If you send founders out in a boat, 4 or 5 founders out in a boat, come back with one founder because he killed everyone else. So how does that work?
Well, so there's a two-pronged answer there. So my original co-founder is not my co-CEO. So I was very fortunate enough when I embarked on this journey into the beverage alcohol space to be introduced to a woman by the name of Amy Lynn Bakshi. who had recently left Diageo after a 20 plus year career there. She had left there to do some more entrepreneurial type pursuits in the beverage alcohol space. So through her, I was able to learn a lot about the industry and, what it was about. And it just so happened that her husband, John, was at the time also at Diageo in a very senior management position. He ended up retiring a couple of years ago, and he's now sitting on my board. So even though I don't have that experience, we've surrounded ourselves with lots of people that have industry experience. But about a year ago, as we continued to grow the business, and I found myself, like many founders, wearing way too many hats to accomplish everything that needed to be accomplished in a fast-growing business. I realized that I needed some assistance from a management perspective, and I was just fortunate enough to have another friend who happened to be a West Point grad. And we've known each other for 10 plus years, and so we share a lot of the same philosophies, and we get along really well. So I invited him to join me and help running this business, because we had expanded from just a handful of employees to multiple employees in multiple states, involved in a variety of activities. And I'm smart enough and not so egocentric to know what I'm good at and what I'm not so good at. And so having somebody that can have those complementary skills, be a partner in this business, I've found is very, very valuable. And again, I can't do it all as much as I'd like to, but at the same time, it's good to have a good partner that can help you operate it's not as complicated as operating a nuclear submarine, but there are a lot of facets to any business, and so we have a really solid senior management team here.
I mean, I noticed that. I was just breezing through your website. You have a strong community around you. It's the customers. You've got lots of advocates, and even your actual team. You don't see a lot of beverage companies and spirits companies putting their entire team on the website. And sometimes when you see the pictures, you're like, does that person really look like they want to be there right now? And your team just looks cohesive. And what's it been like building a team of people that are so enthusiastic?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So we were fortunate to have some really great employees that love coming to work every day and put in above and beyond the call of duty. As I said earlier in the show, we put SoNo, South Norwalk, in the name because we wanted to be embedded into the community. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share a quick little anecdote. So we started in the spring of 2019. So we were operational for just a few months before COVID hit, right? And as much as we all hate to look back into the days of COVID, but if you might remember, one of the things that became almost immediately in short supply was hand sanitizer. And everybody was freaked out that, oh my God, this virus, we got to bathe ourselves in hand sanitizer. And we looked at the World Health Organization formula for making hand sanitizer, and we already had 3 of the 4 ingredients in house, one of which, of course, is alcohol. So we were able to get the 4th ingredient, and we started making hand sanitizer. And the rest of the business was pretty much shut down. We have a tasting room. We couldn't have people in our tasting room, and of course, bars and restaurants were shut down. So we made our first batch of hand sanitizer, and it had a very medicinal, not so good aroma associated with it. And some of the other products we make here, in addition to the whiskeys and the other ready to drink cocktails, we also make gin. And in manufacturing our gin, we use what are known as terpenes, which are essentially essential oils coming from plants. And some of the terpenes we use come from the cannabis plant. And they have a very noticeable cannabis aroma. So we said, what if we put some of these cannabis terpenes into our hand sanitizer? And sure enough, it gave off a wonderful aroma, very much smelling like cannabis. And so one of our biggest consumers of our hand sanitizer, and of course we gave it away to all the first responders, whether they were the police or the fire departments. So for about 6 weeks, all the policemen are running around town smelling like marijuana because they're using our hand sanitizer infused with cannabis terpenes. So I got a big kick out of that, and we're good friends with several of them, and they were laughing about that. We had a cocktail reception for them a few weeks ago, and so they got a big kick out of it themselves. So anyway, so that was a bit of a side step there, but back to the theme that we've got a great team of people here, and we've got a great community of customers, and it's just a lot of fun interacting with everybody.
Thank you for sharing that. Last question for you. I feel like it's so hard for me to put in words, but the way you have approached your life and your business, it seems like, I don't know if it's curiosity, but there's such an essence about the way you approach things and the way you solve problems. What advice would you give, to other people that are starting, their journey as a beverage founder?
Well, don't do it, maybe. So when I first started this business, I'm an engineer by training, and I really love the chemistry and the physical hands-on aspects of this business. And, I taught myself how to distill whiskey, and I've formulated all these cocktails without having any prior experience in the industry. And I really love that creative aspect of the business. But someone told me very early on when I was embarking on this challenge was that you might think you're setting up a distillery that does marketing, but in reality, you're setting up a marketing company that does distilling, and that couldn't be more accurate. And so of my resume, if you will, heavy on finance, heavy on operations, and those types of things. Even though I've got my MBA, I took a couple of marketing classes. By no means am I a marketing expert. And even way back when I went to business school, had I been a marketing major, the world of marketing has evolved dramatically, with social media and TikTok and all that kind of stuff. And so I guess that's if specifically if you're thinking about going into the beverage industry, you need to take a very hard stop at your ability to market products and have your product stand out on the shelf. Of course, you have to have a high quality product, because if you've got great marketing and you convince people to try your product, but it's no good, they're not going to buy the second bottle or can. But you also have to get people interested in your product. If you've got a great product, which is like we do, you have to really put a lot of effort into marketing. And you don't have to put a lot of money if you're strategic and you're smart and you've got the creative side of things down. And so that's where I've been spending a lot of my recent free time, if you will, is really trying to get up the curve on the marketing side of things. We do have a good marketing team, but like everything in our business, whether it's on the operations side or the sales side, there's always room for continuous improvement. And so we're applying that to our marketing efforts also.
I love that answer. I was just actually having a conversation with someone today about how, brand as publisher or brand as marketeer is such a critical function. So, Ted, thank you so much for coming on the show today. To all our listeners, check it out. SoNo 1420. If you didn't catch the story closely enough and you're more of someone that learns by reading, go to the About Us page and read the background behind the story for yourself. It's a fascinating story, fascinating company. And today's show has been brought to you by Firebelly Marketing. Social media marketing is critical, as you just heard. Don't forget to check it out, firebellymarketing.com. Thank you for tuning into today's episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, share the love with your friends, and tag us on social while you're enjoying your future favorite drink from SoNo. And before you sign off, remember, again, that if you're curious about any of the products that Ted has mentioned, go to SoNo 1420 and explore the full lineup. So the Threesome Cocktails or the Double Gold Foolproof Bourbon, you'll find something there to elevate your spirits. So there's the pun from the production team today. Thank you again, Ted, and thank you for your time. Thank you for being awesome.
Duncan, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. Have a good rest of your day.
See you on the next one, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Firebelly Social Show. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.